Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm gonna have this video be two chapters in a way because on the one hand I'm gonna talk about the books that I read in the month of September, and then on the other hand I'm gonna prep for October and decide what books I should be reading this month, which I'm gonna be using my usual little card game, Books Against Humanity, for this. So the three books that I had decided to read in September with this game were The Premonitions Bureau by Sam Knight, then Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. So I had three books planned. I ended up reading only two of these, but I read a lot more during the month that just weren't these books. So the first thing I did in September was actually finish this book called As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. This is number 3, I believe. Yeah, in the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. This is a YA thriller set in the UK, and in the first book our main character investigates a year-old crime because she doesn't believe that the person who's accused was the perpetrator. Basically, some girl disappeared or died, I can't remember, and everyone thought it was her boyfriend at the time who did it. He then killed himself. But she pairs up with his little brother, who's her age, and decide to investigate this because she doesn't believe he actually committed the crime, and she thinks someone else is behind this and his name should be cleared. It evolved in a series of 3 books, and the second book was a completely different story because the girl in question made a podcast of this. She started talking about the story and her investigation in a podcast, and the second book focused a little bit more on that. And then in the third book, we're focusing on a serial killer that roamed in the area, that was never found, or that people thought they found, but that she doesn't believe is the right one, or something like that. So it is in a way a brand new story and a brand new investigation. However, there's some bits of the plot from book 1 and 2 that come back in this book and that are just as important, and we just have more of kind of a thread putting all 3 books together and just, yeah, followed up in this book. It was a hard read, and the reason why it took me so long to read it, I think it took me a good 2-3 months, because I pretty much read half of the book when I went to the hairdresser to get my hair done, because it takes me like 4 hours. And then I went back to the hairdresser, and that's when I read the other half of it pretty much and finished the book finally. It's a big brick. It's not an easy one to read, and the reason why it's not an easy one to read is also because it has more consequences to her action in this book than it does in the other books that are a lot more young adult vibes and a little bit more easy peasy, I want to say. Like, it's just more chill. It's like, oh, a thriller, she's investigating stuff, but she also does stuff herself that could get her in trouble, and this book explores a lot more of those consequences. And I was not in the right mental health state when I first started it to get into this, and it's got 2 parts, and I got to part 2 where you start seeing where it's gonna go and where it's gonna go wrong, and I knew it was gonna be really good and really well done, but I just couldn't get through it. I was still in my old job at the time, and I had some mental health issue due to it, and I was just like, I can't handle it. And then finally I changed jobs, had a bit of a break in between, had a proper holiday and everything, and I managed to finish this book, and it was fine, and I was okay, and my mental health was okay. So I think I rated it 4 stars. Yeah, that's correct. I rated this book 4 stars. I think in my head there were a few things that could have been slightly better, and I just didn't love the fact that there were consequences to her actions, because I was like, this is a young adult. If I wanted to read an adult thriller, I would. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Next, I also finished reading Murder on Mystique, which I do think I started in August when I was on holiday, and then just finished off this month in September. This is an adult mystery slash thriller. It's not really a thriller. It's definitely a cozy murder type of vibes, and it's not very intense. It doesn't have too much blood or anything. It's quite an easy peasy type of murder mystery, if that makes sense. Definitely has those beach holiday vibes. It's on an island. It's, you know, the weather is lovely. Well, that's not true. There's a storm coming, but apart from the storm, it doesn't feel like autumnal or anything at all. So I kind of tried to focus on finishing this at the beginning of the month before I could get back into those more autumnal vibes that I really wanted in September. But yeah, I enjoyed it okay. I think the dialogues were what tripped me. I think the story and the plot I quite liked, and the characters in general, I really loved them and got to know them through the book. It was really fun. I enjoyed discovering them and their features, but the dialogues were weird. And I think what bothered me is that none of these people talk like how real people talk. It just felt like writing style rather than actually real life spoken style, if that makes sense. It's a hard way to explain it. I feel like it's more, sometimes someone would come up to someone else and talk about something that was so specifically to discover something about that character, and no one would actually do that. People don't actually say things out loud immediately. They beat around the bush a little bit. There's a little more innuendos and kind of just unsaid things that you understand through reading between the lines when you're talking to someone, and a lot of it was just way too on the nose and direct. That was my main issue with this book. It was the dialogues. So I ended up rating it 3 stars. Next, I also read a book on my Kindle on my phone, which is Eclipse the Moon by Jessie Mihalik. It's basically book 2 in a series of sci-fi romance novels, and I really enjoyed the first one, and the second one was just as good because I rated it 4 stars. It has a crew of characters and you kind of follow them. So in book 1 you had our main character meeting this guy, and then in book 2 it's someone else from the same crew, and I kind of love those types of books where you just know the character that's going to be involved in the next book. Like you can feel, oh, that the romance in the next book is probably going to focus on these two because I can feel the vibe starting there. So yeah, really enjoyed that one. And I also did read The Premonitions Bureau. I mostly listened to the audiobook actually while I was working because I kind of like to do that when it's non-fiction, and this is a non-fiction. It's quite thin, and this is basically about how in the, I think it's the 60s, I might be wrong, but yeah, it says 1966. So in the 60s, this guy decided to put together this team of people that he discovered could have premonitions of the future, especially of big catastrophes and stuff like that. But it's very interesting to plunge into those kind of things that happened in real life because this is a real story. And I think the synopsis of this really sold me the book because it says towards the end, it says here, like, among them were 2 highly gifted percipients. Together the pair predicted calamities and international incidents with uncanny accuracy. And then they gave Barker their most disturbing warning that he was about to die. This kind of synopsis really makes me want to read or listen to an audiobook of this type of books. But I felt like it was a little bit of a jumble of stories and nothing was very... It wasn't told very well, if I'm honest. Like, it was well written, but it wasn't told very well because everything felt like it was in a jumble. Nothing felt linear, nothing felt like well thought out in terms of how, in which order to tell the story. And it was really hard to focus and figure out who we were talking about when. And a lot of it was highly scientific and didn't have that much to do with, you know, I feel like this is the kind of exciting story that I'd be like comparing maybe to John Ronson, I never know what his name is, when he wrote about the man who stared at goats, because that was about the story of how, I think it's the CIA, I might be wrong, who did experiments on people with LSD in the 60s, but anyway, it was fascinating, and this didn't take that kind of edge. It kind of just went in a different direction that was way more sciencey, and that's fine. It was very interesting. I learned a lot of new things, but it wasn't what I wanted. And if I had known it was going to go in that direction, I wouldn't have picked it up. I ended up rating it 2 stars because of that. Then I went on holiday, and during my holiday I wanted to take with me a paperback book. So I ended up picking up Crazy Rich Asians, which I watched the movie of, really enjoyed, and really wanted to read the book. So I had bought this a while ago and I was like, that seems like such a good holiday type of book, paperback, easy to carry, and also just fun, comedic, romance, etc. So yeah, I was looking forward to this. I don't know if you've seen the movie. If you haven't, this tells the story of Rachel Wu, who is invited by her boyfriend to go meet his family in I think it's in Singapore, and she doesn't know yet, doesn't realize how rich, how truly, truly rich those people are, and the world that she's about to enter is basically full of sharks. So this is really fun, and I really enjoyed myself. It was exactly what I wanted, and I finished it in the first 2 days of my holiday. I read it so fast, and then I was just like, what do? I need more books to read. So I ended up getting the next book, China Rich Girlfriend. Also took me like 2 days and a half, something like that. Really enjoyed the second book in the series, and I did buy the third book. I haven't received it yet, and I kind of wanted to break from this type of story anyway, so I haven't read it yet anyway, but I read the first two. And I rated the first one 5 stars and the second one 4 stars. The reason why is I think the second one felt a little bit different from the first one, and I feel like in the second one, the way it was told wasn't just quite as good. It felt a little bit like he was focusing on so many different, like more characters, and kind of less so on the people I was truly interested in because of that. So I feel like that's why it just didn't reach the level of the first one to me. And then finally I read Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, which was on my TBR for that month, and I mostly read it physically. I started it on holiday as well, and then I finished it off with the audiobook like literally just today. So it's the 2nd of October technically. So yeah, I am late for September, but whatever, I mostly read it in September. And I really, really enjoyed myself. I did not expect the turns that it took, because I had watched The Martian, the movie. I have not read the book, but I enjoyed The Martian, and I kind of thought it was going to be more in that direction. And yes, it does have a lot of sciencey stuff, and it's obviously, you know, about astronaut stuff and going to space and everything, like The Martian, but there is an actual alien fictional character in there. I don't think that's a spoiler. It's like one of the main bit of the story throughout most of the book. So yeah, to me, like, that was a very different direction, because it feels out of the realm of potential realism for futuristic stories, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but I kind of feel like when you read a book like The Martian, or when you watch the movie The Martian, it feels very realistic, and like everything that he's done in that movie feels, in the book, feels like things that could happen. The alien stuff in this book, I don't know if I quite believe it, but I like it. It was really enjoyable. It was really fun. It just felt more sci-fi to me than The Martian, if that makes sense. So yeah, I rated it 5 stars, literally just finished it, and really enjoyed myself. So the only book that I did not read was Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. I just didn't get to it, but actually I read a lot more than 3 books in the end. So in total, you could say I read 6 to 7 books, basically, which I'm pretty happy about. It was a very good month for reading, and the reason why is also because I didn't really write anything that month, so instead I read a lot. And this brings us to part 2 of this video, which is going to be what should I be reading this month in October. So I'm going to try to write a bit more in October and to use the month to prep for NaNoWriMo, which is November, which is when people try to write like 50k in 1 month, which I probably will not be able to do, but whatever. A lot of people who participate in that event try to use October to prep for it, and I'm going to try to do this, but I don't want to focus solely on that, and I still want to read a little bit, and I really want to read spooky books. Now, the first book I'm going to be reading during that month is not a spooky book. It is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid, because my friends both have received their copy, and so have I, so we're going to buddy read it at some point, and I think it's going to be in October, so I'm just going to put this one on the TBR for the month of October. So I'm going to be doing the same as last month. I'm only going to be picking 3 books because I think that worked really well for me, even though I didn't read all 3. I read a lot more in the end. I'm going to function on vibes and vibes only, and if this doesn't work for me, if there's a book in there that I have to pick that just doesn't feel like it's in the right vibes, I'm going to skip that prompt and try to get another. If you don't know how this game works, have a look at the playlist where I have all of the previous videos of me playing this TBR game, but basically I have 2 sets of cards. The turquoise ones are basically question prompts, and the yellow ones are answers to those questions. So I have like blanks and those, and then these are filling the blanks. Okay, like for instance, and this was the question I had last time for magic lessons that I ended up not reading, but this gives you an example. I could have this prompt, for instance. So the question is like an author who that, and then the answer to it to complete the prompt starts with the same letters as my initials. I'm going to give myself a hand of 3 answer cards, and then I'm going to pick 3 question prompts, and every time I use one of my answer cards I can replace it from the stack so that I always have 3 in my hand basically. Let me shuffle the cards. And the yellow ones. Now I'll get 3 cards, 1, 2 and 3. And they are Out of Fear of Missing Out. I mean, I've bought a lot of books like this. Owned for the Longest Time. Okay. Hopefully I get the right vibes from this. And Without Knowing Much About the Story, which I've also bought a lot of books like this. Okay, my first question is, a book I have, okay, well that's going to be an easy one. A book that I have out of fear of missing out, or a book that I have without knowing much about the story, or a book that I have owned for the longest time. I think I might try a book I have owned for the longest time and see what I have in specifically the more horror / spooky vibes category. Okay, I feel like this is fitting. I'm gonna pick The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware, and this is a thriller and it's an adult novel, and basically I have tried to pick this one in several TBRs in the past, which means I've owned this book for a good old long time, and I feel like it counts as one book that I have owned for the longest time, which is this prompt. So yeah, I'm gonna go with this book. I hope I don't regret it, because I mean, I've owned it for a long time and I'm unable to pick it up, which means, do I really want to read it? I think basically this tells the story of an au pair who's in prison and the kids have died under her care, and she's writing a letter to a lawyer to ask to be represented because she says she didn't do it and that there's some spooky things going on. That's all I really know, but I feel like this is appropriate for October. Let's replace this yellow card with the next one, which is I pick at random from my Goodreads TBR list. That could be fun. I don't think it's up to date, but yeah. And the next prompt question that I have is an adult novel that which. Again, that could work with horror stuff included. So, an adult novel that I pick at random from my Goodreads TBR list. The problem with that is it's not going to be horror specifically, and it's not going to be the right spooky vibes that I want specifically. I might change my whole hand. I'm allowed to do this, but once I do this, I have to use it at least once before I do it again. Okay, I have 3 new cards, which are has a title, sorry, in 4 or more words. Then I do not own physically yet, which I have a few like this, and then matches my outfit, which my outfit is, I'm wearing, you can't see, this is a striped t-shirt, a striped sweater with a bit of red on it. It's black and white, and then my trousers are black, and then I have socks that actually have red on them. Let me go down. That have red on them and pink and black. So yeah, that could work. Now I know that I want something that's gonna be an adult novel, which is the only problem because I had a book in mind that I was like, that matches my outfit, kind of, but it's a YA novel, so that doesn't work. So let me see. Okay, I can't really see anything that I really want to use for matches my outfit, so let's see for the other 2. It could be an adult novel that has a title in 4 words or more. Okay, I'm gonna do that prompt. I'm gonna pick this prompt, an adult novel that has a title in 4 words or more. And the book I'm going to use for this prompt is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I quite like this author. I've read a couple of books by him and they're not that spooky, but kind of like in the right vibes for spooky time. So I'm hopeful that this will be perfect because this does have vampires in it, but it's meant to be more spooky vampires and not sexy vampires. Okay, I'll replace my card for one last time. It's going to be, I think a friend would enjoy. Interesting, okay. And then I'm gonna pick my last question prompt because I only wanted to pick 3 books, so what's the last one? A young adult novel that which. Can you zoom on this? No. Yes, okay. So, it could be a young adult novel I think a friend would enjoy, that I do not own physically yet, or that matches my outfit. And since I've kept that card and I had an idea for that card, a young adult novel that matches my outfit, I'm gonna pick the right book for this time. And granted, it only matches my socks, but I'm gonna read Clown in the Cornfield 2, Friendo Lives, by Adam Cesare, or Cesare, I don't know how he pronounces his last name. Anyway, I'm gonna read this book. It's the sequel to Clown in the Cornfield 1, which doesn't have another title. It's literally just Clown in the Cornfield. I definitely think it matches my socks because I have a lot of black, you know? This is black, this has red on it, and it also has black on it. So I kind of feel like that works. I feel like. I might be cheating here, I don't care. Anyway, this is very much spooky vibes and perfect for October because it is a slasher type of book. And so in the first book, we have this teenager who moves to a small town somewhere, and when she arrives, she realizes that the teenagers there are being killed off one by one by this scary killer clown. And in the second book, I guess he's still alive and he's back. So this is very much the type of book that is guilty pleasure, I want to say. Like, it's a bit easy, if that makes sense. That's what a slasher is. That's what slasher movies are, and I think it embodies the vibes of a slasher movie so perfectly well. And yeah, I'm excited to read that as well for Halloween time. Then finally, if I have time, and I'll probably do this in audiobook format, but I do own the physical book, I'm going to be reading Janet McCurdy's new autobiography, which is I'm Glad My Mom Died, and it's basically the story of how, as a child actress, she was kind of like abused and used by her mom to make money, and that was pretty much why when her mom finally died, I guess, she wasn't that unhappy about it. I don't know all the details about it. I have seen a few bits of interview here and there with her, and it sounds fascinating and kind of like really horrific, but also just very therapeutic for her. And I think a lot of people have said that she's very well spoken in the book. It's really interesting to hear her story because it explains so many things that people have wondered about, but also in a very intelligent, well-educated way, I guess. Not just I hated my mom, she was a bitch, but kind of a little bit more profound than that. And yeah, it sounds interesting. I've been curious about this story. It's not a huge book, and I do have it on audiobook, and I think she's the one narrating it on audiobook as well. So I'm probably gonna listen to this like during work and stuff. So yes, I'm gonna try to read this one as well in October. Which means that these are the books I'm gonna try to get to in October, hopefully. It's quite a big list compared to what I had last time, which was just 3 books. And I don't have a holiday coming up this time, so we'll see. But it is Carrie Soto is back, then I'm Glad My Mom Died, the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, Clown in the Cornfield 2, and The Turn of the Key. And that's it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, leave a comment down below. I always try to respond. I'm obviously going to try to keep this up and have those TBR videos coming back again for the foreseeable future. So feel free to subscribe if you like that kind of content. Ringing that bell, all that jazz, it really helps me. So yeah, see you guys in the next one.